Welcome to Trends with Benefits, an award-winning podcast by VanEck with a forward-looking perspective. We explore new ways of thinking about the markets, work, and life. Here's your host, Ed Lopez.
So you're calling from Miami. Is that where you're based now?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Synchronistically, before the whole NFT boom had already started, I already had some good roots here.
Yeah.
Before the crypto capital.
How's the city going in terms of like adoption of crypto and all that effort?
It's pretty incredible. In fact, the mayor recently launched the Miami coin. It's an initiative. They take the revenue from the coin. 80% goes to the miners, 20% to the city. And that 20% is used for city initiatives. Instead of raising taxes, they can use the proceeds from the crypto coin. And so already they've had, I believe the last I checked, it was at over 10 million that went to a rent subsidized program. The mayor is very, very crypto forward. He's incredibly visionary. He really believes in the technology as a way to he's been very vocal to say prevent corrupt governments and kind of get government under control a bit. So it's pretty exciting to have him as our leader here.
Yeah. Has there been any, I guess, negative pushbacks kind of with the drop in Bitcoin and crypto prices? Like, man, you guys shouldn't have done this kind of thing?
No, I mean, the good thing is, there's such a huge demographic of people that really believe in the technology. And most, those understand that that's to be expected with a new, not only the technology, but with a new currency like that, people are more flexible with it being a little volatile and understanding that it's part of the process.
So I'm speaking with Jessica Santiago, CEO and curator at ArtRepublic Global. She's going to be my guest today, and we're going to be talking about NFTs and the intersection of NFTs with art in particular. What I'm hoping to do is kind of get beyond the headlines, the sensational headlines around NFT prices, really kind of explore how somebody is using it in real life. And in this case, how Jessica is working with digital artists and helping them mint their own NFTs as well. So Jessica, welcome and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I during our prep session, I heard that you were having an event in New York, and I asked my colleague Donna about it, and she sent me the link, and I'm glad I did, because it was kind of a good introduction to what you're doing, I think, and I went to an event you were having. I don't know what you would call it necessarily. It's like I think it was termed like the Genesis Project for Chris Parsons, and you were working with him to mint his first NFT.
Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit about Chris Parsons himself as well? Because he had a really interesting backstory, and what exactly you guys were doing at this event.
Sure. So the event, you're right. It's a quite different type of event. It's part exhibition, part panel discussion. It is somewhat traditional in what you would consider as an exhibition opening or a kind of artist meet and greet event. We've been very blessed to have a great partnership with Samsung. They've been such an incredible partner, supporter in this space. Christopher Parsons is an artist that I've worked with for many years now. He's a photographer, filmmaker, director. He's had a really great career. He's most notable for having been Kendrick Lamar's personal photographer for 8 years. So he was doing a lot of tour photography. He did portraits of almost any celebrity you can think of, everyone from Rihanna to, so many hip hop icons, cultural icons. It was very important for us together to be able to move him into a space, into the NFT space, but really specifically so he could begin building a collector base. All of his work in the past had been commission based. And so being able to build a collector base is something that is really, a huge opportunity for him.
Yeah, that's right. So during that event, you were going to mint this first video, and then he talked about future, versions of it. So I guess that starts to build out the collection.
Yep. So the collection was 5 NFTs that were of works that were actually not any of the celebrity work. This was all work by people that he was struck by, people that he's been moved by their spirit or their contribution, whether it's to their community or to culture. And then he would put his own artistic taste on the works. This specific collection was all about auras and seeing people's aura and really being able to move beyond what we see at first glance with somebody that we meet. And then we actually premiered a film, which was not yet been minted because the film was actually just premiered. But you're right, he's going to do different iterations of it. There'll be about 7 different versions of it that each other event will show. And then the final piece will be minted as an NFT.
Yeah, that's really cool. So are you doing other events like this with other artists as well?
Yep. So we have a monthly program with Samsung with their experiential flagship store in the Meatpacking District. For us, this is a really major milestone for the NFT movement because it helps us in the path to adoption because we get to connect with consumers and people that are either, were invited from the community through our network. We've already seen it grow. I mean, our first event had 107 people. The last one had 322. So we're, really seeing the numbers grow quickly, but we do these monthly there in an effort to make that location a hub where people, whether it's artists or people who are just curious, people who might just be coming and looking for a new TV, to also realize that they can learn about NFTs and it'd be a consistent place people can come back to.
So let's take a step back and perhaps you can talk about ArtRepublic. What is ArtRepublic? What do you guys do? What's your mission?
So ArtRepublic is a curation agency. We have specialized in representing contemporary digital artists since 2015. So we are very, very proud of that. When people hear that within the NFT space, it usually takes them back. Most people don't realize that NFTs were even a thing. And quite honestly, they really weren't. The artists, though, were still making that type of work. So we specialize specifically in those that this is their native medium. And we partner with different brands, institutions, and collectors to help them either support the works through contributing to the communities by things like what Samsung has done with our event series, or to build their personal collections.
From my ignorant perspective, what is digital art? How would you describe that? I mean, when I think about digital anything, I think about computers and algorithms and programming, and hadn't really thought about that as art per se. But what is digital art?
Sure. So, that was back in 2015 when I started, it was a question everybody had. When we would say we're throwing a digital art exhibition, people really couldn't even get a visual of what we were talking about. But you probably saw a lot of digital art if you went to any concert. So all of the visuals that are designed at concerts are designed by digital artists. You go to a music festival, a lot of brand campaigns, and you see animated pieces. Those are done by digital artists. A lot of the artists we work with were a part of UCLA's digital media program. A lot of them just picked it up and taught themselves the skills through the software. Now the software is more and more available and it's more user-friendly, but now digital artists are pretty widely known in the NFT space specifically.
And I want to talk about the technology in a little bit, but how do you start to find artists, or what are you looking for in terms of, are they clients of yours? How would you describe them?
Yep. So we are a very artist first agency. First and foremost, we represent the artist. We are very proud of our roster. I could say the one thing that ArtRepublic has in our ethos and deep in our DNA is artists with purpose. We don't tend to work with artists that are, that they're focused on activism or, certain types of content that might be polarizing. The artists that we gravitate to are ones that, of course, we give them full self-expression, but we do tend to like to work with artists who are looking to either evolve human consciousness or our perception or help us to connect on a deeper level. So we have a pretty remarkable roster of artists that we work with, and we help connect them with the right brands, institutions, and collectors.
Yeah, and I wonder if you could speak a little bit about the commercialization of it a little bit and the brand. I mean, how big is the market for digital art? And perhaps, is it a consumer market? Is it a more commercial market where you have big brands? Really, that's kind of where the opportunities are for artists?
That's a great question. It's evolving so fast. We went from, like I said, in 2015, people, when we would say digital art, as a consumer, they had really no idea what we were talking about most of the time. There's always been a market within brands because they've been using them since we had Web 2. Really, they've been working with artists to create content. So animations, activations, experiences in stores. There's always been that market. It falls much more under a marketing and advertising budget and market at that point. But now we've seen this incredible shift that has just happened at the speed of light. I mean, we went from having basically no consumer market. When we were first representing these artists, we would have the work on a USB drive and we would show it, at exhibitions. And if somebody came up and wanted to collect it, we would say, well, we can make you a USB drive. You have to buy you a projector, and this is how you can begin to live with the work. So it wasn't that practical. But now, I mean, just in this last year, we had creators as a whole were able to produce revenues of $3.9 billion through NFTs. I mean, this is changing the landscape of the creator economy so rapidly, but it's also evolving the brand market as well, because in Web 2, it was really about a company hiring an artist, and they were pretty much dictating what they wanted, whether they wanted it to be more blue or, the lines they wanted. It was very much, we want to see it like this. And they were using, their skill sets to create the work that they wanted to see. Now in Web3, it is very much, the brands are looking at how they can be brought into the community of the artist. So it's really about what value can that brand bring to the table for the artist to be able to gain access to the community that artist already has.
What's your take on the kind of the headline grabbing prices that NFTs have garnered over the last couple of years or so? I mean, some it seems like ridiculous prices, but I guess it's not ridiculous if people pay them. Is that sustainable, or do you think that we'll find a more, for lack of a better term, sustainable or less volatile market?
It's there have been some huge headlines. I think what everyone that are making these iconic, major purchases, what they're seeing is that this is important moments historically. So there's understanding that, what's interesting is the institutions like a Sotheby's or a Christie's, for majority of the time, up until literally less than a year ago, they were recording history after the artists were deceased. What people are able to see is that these institutions have historically been so behind, but because we don't need them to validate the work, the crypto, people becoming more fluent through crypto obviously is a major part of it. Those that were early on have an incredible amount of wealth that understand the technology. They have a very different depth of perception of where things are going and who the major players are. But they're able to see, someone like Beeple will historically be compared to a Basquiat or, the blue chip artists that we've already seen. But we don't have to wait anymore for institutions to validate them. Now it's being done through, again, the peer-to-peer economy. So although while some of them do seem outrageous, I think it's just a massive shift in how quickly we're able to look as peers when something is truly historically relevant. A lot of these, like the CryptoPunks, I mean, they will always be iconic because they were using the technology in a way that had never been done before. We're just able, because we have a lot more younger wealth and people that are native to the technology that are able to invest in it. So we're seeing it in real time.
For the artists that you work with, there are different platforms, right, where people can find their NFTs. Well, in general, there's different platforms for NFTs. What platform do you tend to work with and distribute NFTs on?
So the one that we have worked with the most is Super Rare. I think that, they have an incredible collector base. They're very special for a lot of different reasons. For me, first and foremost, they were the pioneers of artist royalties. And when I first started learning about blockchain, that was what we all thought was going to be the biggest game changer long term. Going back to some of the old, more traditional blue chip artists, Basquiat or his family never saw any revenue from pieces that sold for $100 million, maybe past what he sold for 2,000 when he was trying to make ends meet. So those days now with this technology are over. So that to me was really important, that they had that vision to actually use the technology in that way. They also are a highly curated platform. They have an incredible team. John Crane is a visionary, the CEO and founder of that platform. Their whole entire team is just professional, has great ethic. I really believe in them. There's also Nifty Gateway that is a phenomenal platform too. We are actually building our own because we did see that a need in the market was for these ones that are art related, A lot of times there's restrictions on the artwork. So they can only be 1 minute or they can only be 50 megabytes and they have to be square most of the time. And when it's truly artwork, if it's a lot of times these generative pieces or something that's more crypto art, that completely is fine. But if it's a true contemporary art piece, a lot of times the artist might want to have it horizontal or they might want to have it vertical, or it could be a film piece that needs to be 5 minutes and needs to be 150 megabytes. So our platform will be able to accommodate all of that for artists. They'll have no restrictions on their ability to mint the works. And that's actually launching during NFT NYC in June.
So one thing I'm trying to reconcile in my mind is how a platform like you've described, do those operate more like exchanges and kind of an exchange of ownership rights? And how that differs than, say, something like a Getty Images, where you can license an image or license a video clip or something of that sort. How do I think about those two?
So, they are somewhat similar. It really depends on the need and the desire of the collector. So a lot of times if you're doing it for, mostly Getty Images would be used for if you have a press article, you need to pull some images or stuff that's very, very commercial. Sometimes people still will want to live with the work, but that tends to be for commercial use. If you're a collector and you want to be able to have a piece that you're looking at as an asset, that is where you're going to want to really focus on NFT artists that are on an important, meaningful platform.
If I'm a collector and I buy an NFT, is there a mechanism to license it out for big brands if that was an opportunity? Do you know?
So it depends on the type of NFT. That is, that was one of the appeals in the Bored Apes, which we've seen have gone for some pretty remarkable prices, 250,000 and up. I mean, they have had some remarkable success, but that was really a big part of their success, was that when you buy that piece, you actually own the copyrights. You own that intellectual property. So we saw one owner of a Bored Ape, he licensed it to Rolling Stone to put on the cover of the magazine. So now you have this asset that has the potential to bring you revenue in perpetuity. I mean, that's truly something remarkable. On the other side of that, if it's an artwork, the artist still owns the copyrights to that work. You own the token that's directed at the artwork. So those are different.
Got it. So it's you buy it for kind of more personal use, maybe, and collection use, and while the artist still has the ability to license it out.
Yep. But I mean, also as that artist grows, I mean, a lot of these artists are doing now, they're doing major brand collaborations that are culturally relevant and have significance. They are doing public works. I mean, they're growing their community base, their collector base. So those works are going up in value. So it still is something that you're looking at as an asset that if you wanted to, you could sell on another platform and reap the benefits of that investment.
How did you come to find NFTs and kind of find that marriage between technology and art?
So I feel like I'm definitely one of the rare people that actually saw the use case, experienced the need for this well before the technology came about. Well, the technology was accessible, I'll say. So back in 2015, we were doing these exhibitions. I actually came across some digital artists on Instagram. I moved into the art world as a profession after going through some health issues. So art was a part of my personal healing process. So I gravitated to immersive environments. When I saw these artists on Instagram, I was like, this is incredible. I would love to sit in one of these rooms all day long with the sound frequencies and these beautiful visuals and just, experience this on a regular basis. And so I started producing shows like that. They were always geared towards these immersive environments around wellness. And so back then, we would have to put the work on a USB drive. You'd have to hire a production company to bring in LED walls or projectors. And because I could foresee that this is valuable, this is a new medium, even though we didn't have a way to really sell it easily at the time. I mean, these artists, there were digital artists back since the 80s. I mean, they were working, completely analog back then, but, they still were able to sell the works and you would buy the file. It wouldn't be protected like it is on blockchain now, but you could live with it. So, but then I would have to have the production company, I would tell them, I want you to delete that file in front of me so I know it's gone. And they would look at me like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. But I kind of knew that these artists are going to be valuable. This is the next major medium. And it was quite intuitive, I think. It was a lot of, serendipity for me. Super thankful now because we're on the leading edge of this movement. But I remember thinking, okay, we have to find a way to protect the work. And my fiance, who's very tech savvy and really into culture, showed me this video on blockchain and back in 2016. And I became obsessed. And I was like, this is it. This is our way to be able to sell these works and protect these artists and get them royalties and actually give them a career. And so I started researching it. And funny enough, I had a roadmap that was very similar to Super Rare. It's probably why I have so much respect for them. I just knew nothing about technology. So I had to spend another year or two figuring out, like, how do you actually build a product and what do these terms mean? And, what is it? What kind of dev team does it take? And back then, everyone was still figuring out blockchain. It was so early. I kept pursuing it. But the point in that is we really knew there was a need for this. And so when we started seeing these platforms come out, I was like, okay, this is going to really be big. But even for years after that, it wasn't until everyone was kind of quarantined and stuck indoors and everyone started, then digital artists really started exploding because everyone's sitting on their phones all day. We're looking for something to inspire us. Everyone was really valuing art. How did we get through that? Music, movies, books. We got through that whole time by inundating ourselves with the arts. And so we started having all these clubhouse conversations, and digital artists were producing massive amounts of work because they didn't have to work for brands. They could just sit at home and make the work that they were inspired to make. And so that's what really led to this whole explosion of like the perfect storm. We had the technology by then was accessible, and then we had this, long pause where people could find a need for it.
Do you invest as well in cryptocurrencies?
Of course.
Yeah.
It's crazy not to. I've got all this alpha.
That's right. You have a favorite one right now?
Of course, Algorand, I think is, so Algorand, when we talk about the governments, Algorand really is the one that will be able to support governments and banks and major institutions be able to move to a digital currency. So I think the potential there is through the roof. Of course, I think, you have to have some Bitcoin. It is the tried and true. It is kind of the gold standard. Ethereum is not going anywhere for a while. But I think, for me, I really look at the technology behind them. So ones like Polkadot, there's ones that are really, truly adding a new technology to the world. Those are the ones I'm most interested in.
Yeah, I've been interested in Polkadot because of the cross-chain interoperability, I think is the term, right, that it provides. And that's as far as I know, but it sounds cool to me.
It's an important piece. We already even are looking at that in our own platforms, because when you think about it, if you buy a piece of artwork that is minted on Algorand blockchain, or say it's minted on Ethereum blockchain, but then you own the asset and you want to move it to another chain that you believe more in, right now it's complicated. Sometimes you can, most of the time you can't, depending on the chain. So that's a big part of the next phase that we have to figure out.
So that was going to be a question I had for you, and I didn't know if it was a smart question or not, which was, and I don't know how big the network for Algorand is, but let's say, there's some smart contract cryptocurrency out there that you build an NFT on. Is it possible that network disappears for whatever reason, development work stops or it goes away? And then what happens to that NFT? Can it transfer to another chain or what? I don't know if that's even a smart question.
It's an incredibly smart question. It's happened in the past. And, sometimes, if it's on that chain and that chain doesn't make it per se, so say it's at the same time, these are technologies you have to look at like any other tech business. There have been chains that haven't made it. And so what was minted on that chain is not accessible anymore. So it's, it really have to do your due diligence on what you're building on and what you're putting your assets on, really what you're betting on. It still is a very new market. It really, we always compare it to the .com. And, a lot of those companies didn't make it. And, then you had the ones that have changed the world today.
So you're a long-term believer. So this downturn in crypto prices that we're seeing at the beginning of this year
made me buy more.
Yeah.
Great, everything's on sale.
Load the truck up.
I mean, again, I think about it like anything that's new, anything it's volatile. You're looking at this. There's a couple different ways to look at it. A lot of people are looking at it simply as a currency, and currency takes a lot of belief. I mean, that's what we have with the dollar now. We believe that the dollar has value. A lot of that is, it's not backed by gold anymore. It gets a little convoluted when we were printing it off like we are today. But it's like a natural part of the evolution of this. But again, when you focus on the technology, this technology is revolutionary and it's not going anywhere. We're at the very earliest part of all of this. When we begin moving the technology into all of our contracts, when everything that needs to be secure is now on blockchain, I mean, we're going to look at this, everything's going to be an NFT right now. And I think it's so special that it came into the world through art and community. I mean, I think that is a great prelude to what this technology can actually offer humanity.
Perhaps this is your opportunity to talk about other things that you're seeing. It sounds like you have your pulse on current trends. What's one long-term trend you see playing out over the next year or several years?
Well, I think, right now what's exciting is we're seeing, so we started off with the PFP projects, moving into collectible artworks. I think right now, one of the things we'll see a big focus on this next year is music. I mean, this technology is really revolutionizing the music industry. I mean, now we obviously know that the deals that have been offered to musicians thus far are completely not in their favor. Now an artist will be able to launch an NFT to their fan base, give their fans royalties from the streams and from everything the music produces, all the way down to their entire ecosystem. So, I mean, that's going to be really exciting to watch over this next year.
So when you said we, are you talking about ArtRepublic's getting into music as well? Or are you just talking more generally we?
So yeah, more generally we, although we are working with some artists, some music artists. I'm really focused right now on film though, because film historically has not been collectible. You watch short films and look at, again, the overhead that it costs for an artist to get their film out into the world or into any kind of audience. There's just so many barriers to that. Now they'll be able to mint it as an NFT like you saw with Parsons. I mean, the audience response to that film was remarkable. And now somebody will be able to own that, share that with the world. So I think music and film we will focus on first, just because I'm so attached to the medium. I think it's the most immersive medium that we have. But I think we'll see both of those over the next couple of years.
Does the film idea extend to like motion pictures even?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, I mean, there'll be a lot of innovation. I mean, everyone's really figuring this all out now. And I think the biggest hurdle that we have right now is really legal. I mean, there's not enough smart contract attorneys available. They're in such high demand that, building a team of really high performing attorneys that know smart contracts in and out is hard to come by. And when you do, they are incredibly expensive because there's such demand for them. So once we're able to really create some kind of norms in that realm, because everything's like an if this then that right now, and we're trying to think far out as long as we can. But once we create some industry norms, all of this will really start to take off at that point.
Cool. You ready to play Trend or Fad?
Sure.
Wellness apps, Trend or Fad?
Trend. I think, wellness for us is something we're very focused on, but the reason why I think it's such a lucrative market that will become more of a trend is corporate services right now. For instance, I mean, they cannot get employees to come back, and it's because they were these stressful environments. And even with the services that they have, there's only about 20% of their employees that are participating in them. There's so many barriers. They're not getting biometric data. They're not really finding the issues until after they're already having a huge healthcare tax on them. So I think wellness apps, any way for people to begin to monitor their wellness, be more engaged, is definitely the next frontier.
And we've mentioned this already, but Bored Ape Yacht Club, Trend or Fad?
They are going nowhere. Yeah. they were huge innovators in this space. And like I said, being able to own the IP rights. I mean, we're going to start seeing Bored Apes in movies. I mean, they're going to be everywhere. So they're not going anywhere.
The metaverse, trend or fad?
I gotta say fad. I think that right now, the idea of us all hanging out in our headsets is just not reality. I mean, we really see that there's even more demand for the in real life experience than ever. I mean, that's what everyone wants, these communities. Even though we interact through social media, people want to meet each other in person. And I don't know, potentially if there was anybody else other than Mark Zuckerberg building it, then, he wants to take the lead on that. I think it's definitely not going to work.
And then finally, migration to Florida, trend or fad?
Oh my gosh. I would definitely say trend. It's amazing here. We have, I really feel for people that have gone through things that they have, like, in New York and California, just not knowing what's going to happen next. I think we have a good amount of freedom here that I think people really value. I think we have to, at some point, let people, build and trust themselves and each other. And and it's paradise here. I mean, well, I'm in Miami, so I'm getting the best of it. I'm getting the best of it. But yeah, trend for sure.
Well, this is great, Jessica. I really appreciate your time. What's the best way for people to learn more about you, follow you, and see what else you have going on?
Yep. So we are most active on our social media accounts. Instagram is where the art world stuff lives, but all of our information, more info-based events and knowledge that we like to share is on Twitter at ArtRepublic GLB and ArtRepublic Global for our Instagram. And that's where we tend to live the most often.
Perfect. Well, this was fun. Thank you again.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Trends with Benefits.